Few creatures have known the secrets of the ocean as well as the Vikings. These strange men might be familiar to you from various series and books. Their stories transcended time and include heroic and bloody deeds that forever changed the course of the societies of ancient Europe. However, far from the battlefields, these men of war had an incredible ability to dominate the seas. And although you may not know it, many of their greatest discoveries were far from the mainland. Do you dare to dive with us into the nooks and crannies of the ocean to discover some of the rarest sea monsters that were discovered by the Vikings? Then it's time to begin. Number 5. Skelias Grimsley. While it may seem strange, the sea monsters discovered by the Vikings weren't considered individual creatures but generally formed an entire species unto themselves. For this reason, when it comes to deciphering the creatures they encountered, it is very easy to call them by a name that, at the same time, encompasses other monsters with similar characteristics. Such is the case of the Skelias Grimsley, or what is translated as shell monsters, a beast that receives his name due to the armor that adorns its skin. Generally, in Viking chronicles, it's described as an animal the size of a hippopotamus with thick blue scales as solid and thick as a bucket of cement. It was also usually covered in seaweed and seashells, and it's believed that most Viking weapons couldn't harm it. Additionally, according to accounts, this beast appeared mainly during storms, and its home is on the seabed. It's believed that its red eyes are usually the last thing people see before it tears them apart with its jaw, although there are some testimonies that claim that killing it caused the death of its victimizer almost instantaneously. Number 4. Ufagugi. Can a fish be a demonic-looking creature? If we evaluate the question and compare it with the species that abound in the oceans today, the answer is probably a resounding no. At best, there will be some evil fish with radioactive colors that we find amazing, but if you had the opportunity to meet an Ufagugi, you might think differently. Early Viking accounts considered it to be an ancient charcoal-colored creature that prowled the coast in search of wandering ships. It was distinguished by a powerful spear-like tail and a particular deformity in its swimming, as it swam almost backward because its fins were oriented in the opposite direction. However, nothing was as atypical as its teeth, which had the shape of a letter S, and tore through wood and pierced the skin and bones of men who had the misfortune to fall at its mercy. For much of Viking history, the Ufagugi was one of the most feared and hated creatures. The number of deaths attributed to it is incalculable, and over time it even became an insult to those who were considered imbeciles, freaks, or perverts. Number 3. Krak. According to a Viking legend, one day a young sorcerer emerged among the children with great gifts for transforming animal life into strange aberrations. The oracles of the time tried to instruct him, but to no avail. The young man grew up away from human life and surrounded himself with all kinds of creepy creatures, though none was as horrible as his fiercest creation, the Krak. To make his creation possible, the sorcerer took an eel from the beach and transformed it into something completely different. The creature kept its shape, but it grew iron-hard scales, razor-sharp fins, its size multiplied to over 70 centimeters, and from its mouth and tongue a corrosive poison sprouted, which was used by the creature to burrow into the earth and human skin. For decades, this creature was one of the most deadly monsters for the wandering ships that were shipwrecked at sea. The Vikings described it as a fierce and almost invincible beast that coiled around their bodies and drove them to their deaths in a matter of seconds. Even so, many managed to survive its attacks, but only when they managed to go in large groups that sliced the bodies of these killer eels with iron swords. Number 2. Rodkenbinger. Nothing says danger more forcefully than a red crest. At least this is what an old saying of the great Viking sailors assured. And in this world of oceans to be conquered and discovered, there was a creature that could destroy any ship or man without the slightest difficulty. Its name was the Rodkenbinger, and it was known as the creature with the red crest. It was described as a gigantic creature similar to modern whales, but with a much larger head from which a tuft of bright red hair protruded. Its skin was completely white, and the strength of its fins gave it the ability to catch up with the fastest boat. No matter how many were rowing in a boat, this monstrous beast always managed to catch them and sink them into the sea. Only then, in the middle of the shipwreck, this terrible aquatic demon would savagely crush the bodies of all the sailors who invaded its territory. His thirst for blood was practically the driving force of his life, and unfortunately, few managed to survive his fury. In fact, not even the gods managed to come out undefeated against it, and this has been recorded in the folklore of this culture, as in its great historical volumes, Rodkenbinger appears as one of the greatest enemies of all living things. Number 1. Salunger. Some creatures seem more terrifying than they are. Others simply are dreadful. This is the case of this beast baptized by the Vikings as salunger, or the hairy trout, a kind of sinister and elusive animal that no one managed to see twice before dying. According to their legends, this deadly beast possessed a sinister and very peculiar appearance. In general, its teeth were completely black and extremely sharp. Its pronounced jaw appeared to be slightly unhinged, and with one bite it could crush the human body into 4 different pieces. It was generally regarded as a hairy trout because of its elongated shape and resemblance to this fish, although its size was superior and its body was replete with patchy tufts of red or brown hair. Accounts position it as one of the most lethal creatures of the sea, and for decades it ravaged hundreds of ships returning home with the treasures of Europe. It's believed that there were only about 100 survivors of its attacks during this time, although none had a long life, since even in nightmares they managed to see this demonic creature that assaulted their thoughts until driving them to madness. These are just some of the creepiest creatures recorded by the Vikings. Their characteristics are extremely striking, and their stories have been stored forever in the minds of those who got to know them. However, the ocean is filled with far greater and more terrifying mysteries. Many believe that the ocean is a place of peace and tranquility, when in reality it still hides abysmal dangers. Do you want to know what they are? In that case, you should follow us to know the depths of the sea and discover the secrets that no one has shared before. Do you dare to discover them? Well, then check out these videos.